Welcome to a Fresh Perspective podcast, catering to the latest in ingredient trends, consumer insights, and food news. Brought to you by Corbion.
Hi, welcome to a Fresh Perspective podcast, the podcast where we talk about everything food. Welcome to 2022. Today, we have two amazing guests. They are my friends. I work with them. I'm so excited to chat with them about Savory Applications. So that's our special edition today. And allow me to introduce Amber Beckett, our Senior Business Development Manager here at Corbion. You're in charge of Savory, right?
Yeah, so I recently took on the Savory Business Development, and I am very excited. I get to work with fantastic people like Megan.
Yay! And that leads us to Megan. And Megan Weathers, she is a technologist in R&D here at Corbion. Hi, Megan.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Megan Weathers. I'm an applications technologist here at Corbion. Happy to be here.
I'm happy that you're both here, especially since we're going to talk about savory foods, because if I have to choose between sweet and savory, I'm always going to pick savory. And so I'm excited to learn a little bit more about my favorite kind of style of food today. So Amber, kick us off. Tell me a little bit about when we talk about savory in terms of our food industry and the fact that we're in food ingredients, what does that actually mean? And what can we change and affect with it kind of in an overall way?
It's a good question, because it's not necessarily, here's a savory food, here's a not savory food. But in general, when we speak of savory foods as a category, we're thinking soups, sauces, dressings, a lot of deli salads. And the kind of interesting thing about this category is how diverse the offerings are. It's not just one type of food. You've got a wide range of pHs. You've got all sorts of different flavors and exciting trends happening. So it's a cool place to be in 2022, for sure.
It sounds like it. What about you, Megan? Do you have anything to add when it comes to applications and as a technologist here?
No, I think Amber's really spot on. And, all those categories that she mentioned, it's a huge place of growth. Again, in this year, 2022, people are looking for new and interesting foods to try, maybe while they're at home. And so the savory segment is really growing.
Yeah, I know during the pandemic, I definitely upped my intake of savory and prepared foods as working from home more. I don't want to always cook, but I do want to snack almost constantly.
Yeah.
And I would like those snacks to be delicious.
Of course.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about, Amber, you mentioned, there are different types of savory things, right? So give me kind of a rundown, what have you been working on lately? What trends are you seeing when it comes to savory and when it comes to the different ways in which we can affect it?
Yeah, so I think some of the overall trends happening in the broader food category are also dialing down into savory foods. So things like sodium reduction, increased health, those are always top of mind for consumers. And the good news is Corbion has some solutions in that space. Some of our ferments that we've previously discussed that are known to increase savory umami notes that go really well with a savory food, like a soup or a dressing. We have options that will kind of replace some of salt. So you can reduce your salt, add some of our solutions like our PureQ arome, and still keep the same organoleptic profile. So when you've got customers really looking to dial down that salt, that's a great option for them.
Okay, so I have to go back. Organoleptic?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Organoleptic.
Can you tell me what that means?
It's just a descriptor that encompasses the taste of a food, the texture, how pleasing is it? You can rate it on these different criteria.
I'm so using that at my next dinner party. So tell me about, when you talk about sodium reduction, and Megan, maybe you can jump in here. When we talk about something like sodium reduction, you don't want to lose the flavor, right? Exactly, and we know that salt sometimes brings out flavor. I know that when I cook a steak, for example, I don't put any other flavorings on it when I'm searing it, just salt. So, what's the challenge there? How do we reduce salt and not mess up the flavor?
So beyond the organoleptic impact of removing sodium from a product, there are other considerations that need to take place, like water activity. Whenever you take the salt out of a product, the water activity increases and makes it more susceptible to some microbiological outgrowth. And so, we at Corbion, we have this product, that PureQ Arome Na4, which will restore the water activity to where it was with that full sodium content.
So you're talking about preservation as well as taste.
Correct.
Yes.
For the layman among us.
Because
the organoleptics and the water activity.
Yes. So to Megan's point, when you take out the salt, it's not just an organoleptic flavor challenge. You also now have lowered one of your microbial burdens or microbial hurdles, and you need to ensure that you're still providing a safe and delicious food.
Wow. That's so incredible. So what's the challenge there? Like if you, and I know that you do this, you sit down and look at these levels and tell me, like, what is your biggest challenge there? Is it flavor? Is it preservation? Is it both? Is there something that we have to create from scratch in order to replace those things?
Yeah, I would say our biggest hurdle when we're looking at sodium reduction is definitely maintaining flavor profile. A lot of times we see that food processors have, this product that's tried and true and they love and their customers love, and they don't want to change the flavor profile, but they might want to reduce that sodium. And so absolutely, we want to restore it back to its original state as much as possible.
It makes me think of, as a consumer, when I go to the store and I choose, something that says reduced sodium on it, I fully expect that to taste different.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think, is that worth it for my recipe? And I don't know if it is, right? And I'm like, I could just not add the salt from the recipe and then I would still get the flavor from this thing. It's interesting to hear you talk about, trying to maintain it because so often it is so very, very vastly different.
Yeah, I would say, technology is always improving. And I think reduced sodium consumption is becoming really important to consumers. So I would expect technology to just move in the exact same way and keep getting better and better. Hopefully to a point that choosing that low sodium option doesn't seem like a compromise.
Exactly. Well, Jenny, going back to the kind of the trends we were speaking to, I think that is one of the top ones, of course, reduced sodium, but also in line with this consumer drive towards more natural and clean labels. We also have a portfolio that's pretty well suited to that. You've got synthetic antimicrobials that we're trying to replace, the sodium benzoates, the sorbates, and we have a really nice clean label of cultured sugars, vinegars that, can help preserve products without compromising that consumer need for a natural, easy to understand label.
Nice. When you go into that and you say, okay, we're going to remove all of these things that end in IDE, what's your first step? Tell me, like, how do the brains of Amber and Megan work when we kind of look at that overall?
So I'll set it up and then I'll hand it off to Megan, who's our resident expert at this.
Perfect.
But, one of the challenges we were speaking to is how diverse this savory food category is. When we think about preservation, we think about, what are the inherent antimicrobial properties of the food, or what are the inherent ability to foster microbial growth. And so you have these hurdles. You've got, is it a favorable pH? Is it really low? Is it really high? Or is it right in that sweet spot? You've got water activity. You've got, a variety of things that can align to prevent growth. And they vary so much within savory foods that one of Corbion's, really unique value add is this predictive model we have to input consumer, different food matrices in terms of these different parameters. And we can actually predict what level of inhibition the food naturally has, or the food with different Corbion solutions replacing synthetics. And so I'd say that's probably step one. And I'll let Megan expand a little bit on this because she's our resident genius with it.
Like you said, just to expand on that a little bit, you're pretty spot on there with our modeling capabilities, and that generally is one of the first steps that we take. We have a full analytical lab here within our offices. So oftentimes whenever we receive in a sample of a food product, I'll send it over to them. They'll measure pH, water activity, and moisture. And then those just happen to be the inputs into our modeling system. And like Amber said, we can look at the product as it is, either with no preservatives or with those synthetic preservatives, and figure out what level of antimicrobial control they're getting in the product as it is. And then we figure out a way to optimize their antimicrobial control using our Corbion portfolio of products.
Yeah, and this is really value add because typically you would need to run a lot of different studies to say, well, what dose do we need And does that dose affect the organoleptics of the food, and then dial it back and keep running challenge studies or micro studies. And what the advantage of the model is, you really narrowed down what dosages need to be tested. And so it really shortens that development cycle and gets our customers to the market much quicker. And when you're thinking about, what do consumers want in 2022, it's, different types of flavors, different new product innovations. And so shortening that speed to market is really value add, I think.
Yeah, for our customers, for sure. When someone sends you a sample, like you said, Megan, so that process, and I'm just wondering, because if we have a potential customer that's listening, would they talk to you first and say, hey, we're going to send you this, one of our products. We want to increase its shelf life by a week. I mean, is that like a typical request? And then is that the process that you would go through to begin that request by using that analytical tool?
Yes. Yeah, you're exactly right. Typically, it starts with a phone call. Like you said, with this customer, we get a feel for their needs. They might outline their process. So we know of any cook steps, cooling steps, places where we might need to know that their control might be down a little bit and they need a little extra help in that step, things like that. Occasionally, customers will share their formula with us, and we can make up that formula in our labs. Or, the other option is they just send us a sample of their product.
I mean, I can't even imagine being in that position and being able to send it off and say, hey, help me fix this.
Yeah.
Because I do think, shelf life is something that, just from a marketing perspective, because that is the part of the Corbion beast that I am in. From a marketing perspective, shelf life is a thing that we typically hear from our customers, that they do want to increase things like shelf life, especially right now, because if you're getting out to go shopping once a month in the morning, because that's the safest time to go to avoid COVID, you want the things that you're buying to last as long as they can in your fridge or in your freezer. So I think that would be one of the main things, right? And then the mold inhibition and the other things that you work in, right?
Yeah, especially with sustainability. We don't want our customers to have to throw away food that is not, an environmentally friendly, sustainable way to be. And so anything we can do to extend shelf life is really tied into our core mission of promoting sustainability and helping with that messaging.
That's right. Yeah, that's definitely part of Corbion's core. And one of the main reasons I love working here is that we truly do look at things like that.
We'll continue this discussion on the next episode of A Fresh Perspective podcast. Please like, subscribe, and follow us on thebakerstake.com and thecorbioncut.com. Until next time, preserve what matters.